and welcome to Tuesday Newsday, your #1 resource for the entire week's worth of VR news. Yeah, I know, it's Wednesday again, but I had to wait one more day for this video because honestly, some absolutely crazy stuff happened the past couple days for the VR industry, and this is one that you really don't want to miss. We're talking brain-controlled interfaces for Valve's next VR headsets, new haptic gloves, Quest news, possible Doom Eternal VR leaks, and so much more, so let's just get right into the news. Starting off today, Ready at Dawn has just announced a paid Battle Pass system for Echo VR. Personally, I love Echo and it's free, so there's that. However, in terms of the paid Battle Pass thing coming to VR, I'm honestly cool with it. I'm all about a good free-to-play model for multiplayer-only games. I mean, think about it. A game that is multiplayer-only is entirely dependent on maintaining an active player base for the game to be a game at all. Multiplayer-only games just don't work if nobody's playing. And the best way to get people to play your game is to make a good game and to make it free. But you gotta recoup that cost somewhere, so a non-pay-to-win cosmetic-only battle pass doesn't sound like such a bad idea. Unless you're the kind of person that loses themselves to buying skins, I guess. And before the big Valve news, I've got some interesting stats about Oculus Quest software sales numbers compared to PC VR. So look, I'm a big PC VR fan. It's how I use VR most of the time, but I'm not blind and I don't think that you are either. Standalone VR is really taking off right now, namely the Oculus Quest 2. If developers aren't porting their games or creating games for the Quest platform, they're leaving behind massive profits and a huge user base on the table. Now, I knew the situation was pretty bad, but I didn't know how much more profitable creating games for the Quest is versus PC VR. Until this. Skydance Interactive, the studio that created Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, easily one of the best VR games out there right now, has announced that software sales on the Quest and Quest 2 were 10 times that of every other platform. 10 times. I mean, it's amazing that Saints and Sinners runs on the Quest at all. It's a great PC VR game, and it's also a really good Quest game, which should be the golden standard moving forward for VR in general. Good games that are multi-platform, although I do still worry about developers not developing for the Quest getting left behind. So if you have a favorite PC VR developer out there that is making games for that platform, make sure to give them some love. But now, onto the juicy Valve news, and it just might mean that Valve's next headset, or something in the future, is going to have some sort of brain-computer interface built in, but let's back up just a bit. So I've talked about BCIs, or brain-computer interfaces, a lot in the past. In fact, I've got an entire video testing out LucidLink, an admittedly pretty simple EEG sensor that attaches to a VR headset and allows you to supposedly control things within VR using your brain. Now, how well these things work at the moment is certainly up for debate. Usually these signals are pretty noisy, and it's not exactly easy to get precise data from the brain to do anything actually useful, like controlling things with just your brain. But another company called OpenBCI has been working on a more advanced brain-controlled interface that uses a bevy of sensors like the typical EEG to EOG, EMG, EDA, and PPG sensors, which gather data from all over the body, including skin, eyes, muscle movement, and of course, the brain. But the more interesting thing here is that Valve has announced that they're working directly with OpenBCI in a partnership to make VR gaming better through brain interfaces. So I love talking about cutting-edge VR tech here on this channel, obviously. It's the main thing that we talk about. But one thing that sucks a lot of times is that cutting-edge tech is really only intended for industrial purposes, and a lot of it's never going to be in consumer hands, or it'll be in a long time. But this is a little different. This partnership between Valve and OpenBCI very specifically mentions the massive change adding BCI technology to virtual reality will have on the consumer entertainment industry as a whole. So there's a whole lot that we don't know about this partnership, but enough has been said on the topic by Gabe Newell himself through various interviews that we have a pretty clear idea as to what's going on. Gabe Newell has a vision for the VR industry and entertainment in general to be completely revolutionized by the BCI, going as far as to say that when this goes commercial, it could be, quote, an extinction level event for every entertainment form, end quote. Those are some pretty strong words, but it makes sense. Basically, Valve's vision of VR is way closer to the Matrix or Sword Art Online than you'd think, and Gabe Newell Newell has even said himself, we're way closer to the Matrix than people realize. Basically, what they're working on is a headset that will eventually bypass the typical functions we rely on, like sight, touch, smell, etc., and to instead tie directly into the brain. Road to VR puts this in interesting terms, quote, bypassing the traditional meat peripherals of olden function. Eyes, ears, arms, and legs, giving users access to richer experiences than today's reality is capable of providing, end quote. Currently, Valve is planning on having developer kits ready by 2022. The idea behind this is to have these kits be sent to game developers or software developers so they can tailor the software being created to the brain's response. One example I give all the time for something like this is imagine a horror VR game that knows how to make you scared because it's reading your brain activity. Or even simpler, the developers would have a ton of brainwave information and would test their game on focus groups to make sure they're getting the desired effect from their game design. But there's more to it than just that. Motion sickness could be a complete thing of the past soon. TVNZ says in their article on a Gabe Newell interview, quote, BCIs have advanced to a point where vertigo could be suppressed artificially, and it's more of a certification issue than it is a scientific issue, end quote. So while this technology and Valve's long-term goals certainly break the walls between reality and science fiction, I mean, Gabe Newell talks about giving people tentacles that they can control with their brain. I'm not kidding, this is actually talked about here. But right now, BCI research alongside Valve's VR expertise is leading to some amazing breakthroughs that will change the industry and, I believe, the world as well as they do. And in case you're wondering why this isn't a consumer product right now from Valve, well, in a lot of ways it could be, and they talk about that too. BCI research is already at a point where it can read your brain activity and make changes to the game according to that activity, which in itself is pretty incredible. But Gabe Newell says directly, quote, the rate at which we're learning stuff is so fast that you don't want to prematurely say, okay, let's just lock everything down and build a product and go through all the approval processes when in 6 months from now we'll have something that will enable a bunch of other features, end quote. Basically, the research is going so fast that they would have to slow down the process significantly to commercialize it, and it would be commercialized too early. Either way, this is incredibly interesting and it's exciting. The possibilities are quite literally endless regarding BCIs, neural interfaces, and virtual reality. And seeing Valve take the torch regarding research that directly affects consumer entertainment so drastically is beyond cool. Next up is another piece of incredible virtual reality hardware that takes an entirely different approach to improving human functionality and immersiveness in VR. There are basically two paths for the future of VR: Matrix/SAO style full dive, or a more Ready Player One style future with haptic suits and gloves and immersion rigs. Neither are wrong, and it's plausible that both could happen, maybe at the same time, maybe separately. And we talked about the neural side with Valve, but on the physical side of VR hardware, Haptics has just launched a brand new haptic glove for VR and robotics purposes. So if you don't know Haptics, they've been developing a haptic force feedback glove for a while now, and they're kind of insane. Everyone that I've talked to that has tried a pair of these gloves says it's the most realistic virtual reality has ever been for them. And the glove has some amazing technology like an artificial skin layer comprised of hundreds of tiny air bladders, as well as a force feedback system that holds your fingers back. So doing something like turning a knob in a virtual cockpit actually feels like you're turning a knob even though there's nothing really there. But it's not cheap, obviously, and it's not easily available, and it's really cumbersome, needing an air compressor, and it's bulky, and that's where this new DK2 from Haptics comes in. Recently launched by the company, it's smaller, more ergonomic, and way cheaper and easier to manufacture. These gloves are actually already being used for all sorts of purposes, from straight up controlling robotics to training surgeons to car design. It's really cool stuff, and the company is absolutely committed to the peripheral style of VR in the future, saying quite literally, quote, "We're totally committed to our founding vision of fully immersive Ready Player One style VR, and we won't stop working toward that goal until the virtual world becomes indistinguishable from reality," end quote. Now, of course, I can imagine plenty of you are like me, and you're wondering when or if you can get your hands on or maybe in a set of these gloves. Well, this isn't a consumer product, but Haptics has said that they will eventually release a consumer version of their gloves made for mass audiences. They haven't given a date of when or how this will happen or what that glove will look like, but Haptics is currently one of the most advanced and well-funded VR glove companies out there, so it's definitely worth watching what comes from this company, because who knows, we may just be ditching the controller for gloves before we know it. Bethesda may just have a brand new VR game on the way, and it seems many are speculating for this game to be a Doom Eternal VR or something related to either Doom or Wolfenstein. Basically, how this leak started is a game was sent off to an Australian government service that rates games like the ESRB does, but the listing was made public and it's for a Bethesda game developed by id Software codenamed Project 2021A, and it's rated R18+. But the biggest thing here is the very clear virtual reality tag under media type, which likely means that id Software and Bethesda have a brand new VR game coming. Hopefully they learned their previous lessons making VR games like Wolfenstein and Doom VFR and the Skyrim and Fallout ports and actually make a really good and cool VR game. We all know that they can do it. Likely times where we'll hear about this is either going to be E3 in June or GDC a month later, so keep your eyes out for more leaks or info on this game. If you've been interested in the new Tundra trackers from Tundra Labs that I covered a few weeks ago, which promise to be cheaper, smaller, and more efficient trackers than the HTC Vive trackers, I finally have some more information on that. We have dates for the Kickstarter that will start on March 29th of this year and May, with early backers receiving their units towards the end of June. So if you've been waiting for these trackers to become available to purchase, that'll be your chance. Write it down. But now it's time for question of the week from Bad Code. If there was one VR game that I could create with a team, of course, what game would that be? What would it be like? So I've kind of talked about this at length before, but if I could make one game, it would likely be something similar to an Overwatch or TF2 but in VR. I love competitive games, and I would really want a really clean and polished hero shooter in VR that really takes advantage of VR. I think if it was done correctly and it had a big player base, it would be really, really good. And that's question of the week. Make sure to leave your own below, and I may just answer yours next. Don't forget to stop by my stream on Twitch. We always have a great time, and make sure you join in my Discord server if you want to join one of the best VR communities on the planet. I want to thank all of my Patreon supporters, especially my Omegas like Benji, Biz, Caution Ramen, CPCJ79, Debonair Fab, Furtrap, Fusion Oak, HCG Randon, KR, Moyasu Entertainment, That Brought Guy, Tom, Very Evil Shadow, Zolnir, and I'm Not You. I couldn't do any of this without you. Don't forget to like this video if you loved it, subscribe if you want more of this, and hit that freaking bell if you just can't live without it. Much love, Thrill out.